Yeah, it's interesting. This is something that people in Korea and Singapore and much of China really agonize over, right? They feel like, okay, we're doing way too much rote learning, way too much memorization, and it's the Americans who have figured out creative thinking, and we have to go over there on junkets and watch them. And so they do a lot of that. And there are some classrooms where we are first in the world on interactive creative thinking, using information to solve problems and to think for yourself, right? So that's definitely, I think, a latent possibility for the United States. One thing you notice from talking to kids who have studied here and lived here and also lived abroad is that American teachers are typically much more approachable than teachers in many, many countries around the world. So 89% of American 15-year-olds say that their teacher cares about them, compared to 15% in Japan. So what you see, when I surveyed hundreds of exchange students for the book, one of the things they said on their own to the open-ended questions was repeatedly things like, you know, I loved how my American teacher cared about me. My American teacher, you could talk to her. Especially kids coming from, say, Italy or Germany. There was a real sense of relief that the classroom wasn't so sort of hierarchical and rigid. That is a huge potential asset if combined with rigorous learning. And this gets to your point where you need both, right? The sort of surprising thing is that the PISA test that we've mentioned, which is administered to 500,000 15-year-olds every 3 years in 65 countries, that test, which is from the OECD, was designed really to get at this. Your ability not to memorize knowledge, but to take it and do something useful with it, to solve problems, to make a cogent argument in written form. Those kinds of things that we have to do all day long in our jobs and lives today. So I took the PISA to see if that was the case. And I mean, you know, it's not perfect, but it's pretty good. Like I felt myself having to think, which was a weird sensation while taking a standardized test. And I frequently had to write out answers in long form. There was clearly no right answer. It sort of depended on how compelling your argument was. It's graded by humans in large part, so that's expensive. And very much unlike the kinds of tests that we do here in most places. So on that test of critical thinking, Korea is at the top of the world. So what does that mean? You know, I think it is true they're doing a lot of rote learning. And I think it is true that that is important to a certain point, right? And then they're also having to think. So they're doing advanced math at a much, I mean, you know, we have below average, the percentage of kids doing advanced level of math in the US is below average for the developed world. And Poland now has a greater percentage of kids doing that than Finland, which is kind of shocking when you think about Poland has a 4% child poverty rate. So I'm all over the place. But yeah, I think these things interact at some point, and it's hard to separate. What if anything, I think American, huge, sweeping, probably unfair generalization, but if anything, what we do is err on the side of like interactivity and freedom and discussion. And I've been in a lot of classrooms where there's a lot of discussion happening and not a lot of learning.